When people ask the question, what kinds of jobs can people with disabilities do well, I say, what kind of jobs can people do well? They can read, they can write, they can lift heavy loads, they can work on a tank truck, they can work on a forklift. Employers now who do business with the federal government are going to have to set a 7% workforce goal for people with disabilities. On that 7% rule change that Dave just talked about, it's really probably the most far-reaching affirmative action and civil rights policy that has ever happened. And all federal contractors, that's about 50,000 companies that employ 25% of the nation's workforce, will now have a 7% goal, their entire workforce, every job category. And what that means is they have to hire people who are skilled and talented and no less able. There is a tendency to underestimate and undervalue what people with disabilities are capable of doing. My organization has been around for 32 years. Our focus exclusively is on demonstrating new models of employment practices. And for hundreds of years as a country, we have chosen to treat disability as a problem, as an impairment, as a medical issue, as something, as a deficit, as something that has to be cured. Moving into the 1800s, people with disabilities not at all visible. The idea even that some people with disabilities could cause harm to themselves and to others and therefore had to be institutionalized. The Rehab Act of 1973, probably the most forward at that point, the first precedent of seeing disability as a matter of discrimination. It's really society's obligation, it's all of our collective obligation to make sure that people with disabilities are able to go to the theater or to church or to work. These are things that were not commonly believed until very recently, and I'm talking the 80s, the 90s. A little bit about my organization. You see in 2006, moving into employment with a program with the Army through a Memorandum of Understanding, and then most recently, Bridges to Business employment program. We know that 1 in 5 Americans has a disability. And then if you consider the friends and family, you're probably getting pretty close to 1 out of every 2 people. And we've recently invented a disability employment tracker, which is a 40-question questionnaire that allows companies to gauge their hiring practices, and we provide them a report that benchmarks them against other companies. As it's more common, I think we as a society are going to be less fearful, less intimidated. There will be less of a stigma. It's a big bet. We've bet the ranch on it. The whole proposition here is that the new rule change is going to create a market where none exists now. Success would be, for me, would be a workforce that has an abundance of different types of people working with it, including people with disabilities. A workforce that would embrace various abilities, a workforce that would find the talents, tap into those problem-solving skills, that tenacity. Every employer who has tried this has had an enormously positive experience with it, has come away almost evangelical about the experience that they have. I'd have a world without pity. I'd have a world without a sense of nobility. If people are rising above a disability, it would be a society in which people looked at others with disabilities as just other people who have their own differences but have something to bring to the table.